Sunday, July 19th, 2026. MetLife Stadium, New Jersey. The referee blows the final whistle of extra time, and Spain is, for the second time in its history, champion of the world. They won 1-0. They conceded a single goal in all 7 matches of the tournament, and in the final, facing an opponent down to 10 men in the last few minutes, they did not rush, they did not despair, they did not depend on a single genius to resolve the match with an individual play. They waited, they built, and it arrived. This is not a story about an extraordinary footballer. In fact, it is almost the opposite. It is the story of how 23 different people built, over years, a single shared mind, capable of sustaining calm even when the scoreboard refused to move for almost 2 hours of football. Today we are going to ask, what psychology is needed for an entire team to think, feel, and decide almost as if they were a single person? And why, in a sport that idolizes the individual genius, did the team that least depended on having won end up winning? To understand this final, we have to go back 2 years to Euro 2024. Spain wins it with recognizable football, patient possession, coordinated pressing, a bench almost as strong as the starting 11. That title is not just a trophy. Psychologically, it is the first real test of a concept in organizational psychology called collective self-efficacy, a group's shared belief that, together, they are capable of achieving something specific. It is not a single player's self-confidence. It is the confidence of 23 people in the capacity of the entire group, even in matches where they, individually, are not at their best level. But to understand this final, we have to go back not just 2 years, but 4. In the 2022 Qatar World Cup, Spain is eliminated in the round of 16 against Morocco, after a match in which they dominated possession for almost the entire game without managing to turn it into a goal, ultimately falling in a penalty shootout. It is, in a sense, the exact same pattern that years later would end up being the winning formula: dominance without an immediate goal. But in 2022, they still lacked the psychological maturity to sustain it to the end. Out of that frustration, more than anything else, is born the process that culminates in 2026. The national team manager, Luis de la Fuente, takes the reins of the team shortly after that elimination and builds the cycle with an unusual decision for international football: rotating. He gives minutes, responsibility, and confidence to players from different generations, mixing veterans with teenagers fresh out of the youth academies. This has a psychological effect that goes far beyond tactics. There is a concept developed by researcher Amy Edmondson called team psychological safety. The shared feeling that a group is a safe place to take risks, voice opinions, or even fail without fear of being singled out or excluded. When a coach distributes minutes and confidence broadly, instead of concentrating it on 2 or 3 stars, that message filters into the dressing room. Here, no one carries the weight of winning or losing alone, and an 18-year-old footballer who knows he is not solely responsible for the result dares to try the risky play with much more freedom than one who feels everything depends on him. That safety is not built in a final. It is built match by match, training camp by training camp, over years until it becomes almost invisible. No one mentions it in interviews, but you notice it in how an 18-year-old player dares to try a dribble down the wing in a World Cup semi-final without first looking to the bench for permission, or in how a 30-year-old veteran gives up the spotlight without resentment when the system demands it. There is another ingredient, even less discussed: task cohesion, which is different from social cohesion. It is not necessary for 23 people to be close friends off the pitch, although in this group, by all accounts, they are. What truly predicts collective performance is that everyone understands, in the exact same way, what their role is within the system, and trusts that the others will fulfill theirs. Spain trains this obsessively: automatisms, positions, coverages, until the trust between teammates stops being a matter of faith and becomes a certainty trained thousands of times. That process, moreover, is accelerated by a rarely mentioned structural detail. A large part of the squad shares the same home club, training together almost all year at Barcelona, bringing with them automatisms built long before arriving at the national team camp. When several key players already share the same tactical language from their club, the time the national team needs to become a coordinated system is massively reduced. Trust, in that sense, does not start from zero every time they gather. It arrives already partially built. The most revealing statistic of the entire 2026 World Cup is not a goal. It is a defensive figure. Spain conceded a single goal in 7 matches in a tournament of 32 national teams, and over 100 matches. No other team comes close to that level of sustained solidity over 5 weeks. Behind that figure is a pair of center backs who barely communicate with gestures. A goalkeeper who rarely needs to intervene because the entire system is designed so the ball never reaches his area in dangerous conditions. And, above all, a shared idea among the 11 players on the pitch at every moment of the match about exactly where everyone should be, even when the ball is far from them. From the perspective of sports psychology, a defense like that is not explained solely by individual talent. It is explained by something called distributed cognition. In a well-trained system, no single player needs to process all the match information alone. Each one trusts that their teammates are covering their zone of responsibility, which frees up mental capacity for what really matters in that instant. It is, in a sense, a collective version of the flow state we talked about in the video about Messi. Instead of a single brain processing the game without conscious effort, it is 11 brains connected by years of shared training, functioning as if they were one. There is a concrete example of that distributed cognition worth describing. Throughout the tournament, the starting goalkeeper, Unai Simon, functions as a kind of silent orchestra conductor from the back of the pitch, constantly reorganizing the defensive lines with gestures and instructions, even in plays where the ball is 40 meters away from his goal. It is not about seeking the spotlight. It is information shared in real time, allowing the rest of the team to adjust their position without having to turn their heads every 2 seconds to check it for themselves. That kind of constant communication, trained for years until it becomes almost automatic, is one of the least visible and most decisive variables of any solid defensive system. It is also worth connecting this to the story this channel told weeks ago about Lamine Yamal. There we talked about the individual audacity of a 19-year-old boy playing without fear. But that audacity, viewed now in the broader context of the team, does not happen in a vacuum. It exists precisely because the system surrounding him guarantees that, if his risky play fails, the rest of the team will cover that space without the collective result depending solely on him. Individual audacity and collective security are not opposing forces. They are, in the best teams, the exact same thing viewed from 2 different angles. The captain, Rodri, is a key piece of that system, but not because he is a star goal scorer or because he seeks individual prominence. Months before the World Cup, he becomes the first Spanish footballer in over a decade to win the Ballon d'Or, precisely for that kind of silent influence. Few goals, few flashy plays, but an almost unique ability to organize the game of an entire team from a discrete position in the middle of the pitch. His role, on and off the pitch, is more akin to an emotional regulator of the group, keeping the tempo, lowering anxiety when the match gets tense, reminding the team of the plan when the pressure invites over improvisation. Studies on sports leadership distinguish between the charismatic leader, who inspires with his talent and personality, and the functional leader, who sustains the structure of the group during moments of highest stress. Spain, in this cycle, found in its captain exactly that second type of leadership. Much less flashy, but probably far more decisive in a final that is decided in extra time. And here appears a contrast worth naming without aiming to disparage anyone. Argentina, in this same tournament, relied heavily on the individual genius of Lionel Messi to overcome obstacles, something that worked for them for years and that in this World Cup also took them far, right to the final itself. They are 2 different, and equally legitimate psychological philosophies. One builds success around protecting and empowering a genius. The other builds success by distributing responsibility among everyone, so that no result depends on a single pair of legs. On Sunday, in a very long and tightly contested final, the latter ended up prevailing. There is an almost ironic detail that summarizes that contrast better than any analysis. The top scorer of the entire 2026 World Cup is Kylian Mbappé, the forward from France. A player of extraordinary individual quality, but France is eliminated in the semi-finals, precisely against Spain. Individual brilliance, even taken to the extreme of finishing as the tournament's top scorer, was not enough to win the title. What took the cup was once again the system that least depended on having a single standout star. Before reaching that final, Spain had already passed the most demanding psychological test of the tournament. The semi-final against France, with Kylian Mbappé leading one of the most lethal forward lines on the planet. It is, in many ways, an almost perfect preview of the logic that would later define the final. An opponent with dazzling individuality, capable of deciding a match in a single play, facing a collective system trained for years not to rely on that happening on their own side. Spain controls the match with the same order as always, collectively neutralizes the individual attempts of the French attack, and advances to the final. The dress rehearsal had gone well. Now it was time for the main event. The final itself is the best possible example of all the above. Spain dominates possession from the start, with both teams sizing each other up during the first few minutes, without generating much danger. The first clear chance of the entire match falls, in fact, to the Spanish side. Lamine Yamal attempts a cross into the box. The ball bounces off a defender and falls to Dani Olmo, who returns the 1-2 back to Yamal. He finishes one-on-one, but Emiliano Dibu Martinez, the Argentine goalkeeper, responds with a decisive save. It is just the first warning of an afternoon in which Spain would generate the clearest chances time and again, without being able to resolve them until the very end. Psychologically, this is one of the most difficult scenarios to sustain in high-performance sports. Dominating a match without being able to finish it off. The literature on emotional regulation under pressure describes this type of situation as especially prone to what is known as pressure of the unachieved result. The more control a team has without translating it into a goal, the more the temptation grows to abandon the plan, to force desperate individual plays, allowing collective anxiety to begin seeping into hasty decisions. Spain does not do this. They keep playing exactly the same patient game from minute 1 to minute 90, with Dibu Martinez holding his team up every time the Argentine wall is breached. Near the end of the match, in the 93rd minute, Argentina goes down a man. Enzo Fernandez is sent off with a second yellow card. It is, in theory, the ideal moment for the team with the numerical advantage to throw themselves desperately in search of a goal, casting aside any structure in the name of urgency. Spain, once again, does not do this. They maintain the same order, the same patience. Even with an extra man on the pitch, no player breaks ranks to attempt the individual heroics that the moment seemed to be screaming for. It is, perhaps, the clearest proof of the entire match that collective discipline is not a resource you abandon when the opportunity to shine alone appears, but rather the exact mechanism that allows you to take advantage of that opportunity without wasting it. The goal does not arrive through urgency. It arrives through accumulation. In the first minute of the second half of extra time, a headed cross from Nico Williams falls to the feet of Ferran Torres, who finishes cleanly to beat Dibu Martinez, 1-0. It is a constructed goal, not an isolated stroke of genius. In the final minutes, with Argentina throwing themselves into the attack in a last-ditch effort, Spain closes ranks with the exact same discipline they maintained throughout the whole tournament. And the Slovenian referee Slavko Vinjic blows the final whistle. Spain, world champions, their second star. The national team finishes the World Cup with a record of 7 wins and 1 draw, 14 goals scored and only 1 conceded, a 91% performance rate, the best of any champion in the recent history of the tournament. There is a final, bittersweet, and silent note that this channel cannot overlook. For Argentina and for Lionel Messi, this result closes a chapter. It is his last participation with the senior national team, and it ends, this time, without the title that would have crowned an already historic career. After the story we told in a previous video about his psychology, about how he learned to let go of the weight of an entire nation, there is something almost poetic in the fact that his farewell comes, precisely, against the team that best represents the opposite philosophy to his. Not the genius of one, but the trust built among 23. The next day, the Spanish national team lands in Madrid. They visit King Felipe VI and the Prime Minister, and in the afternoon they parade through the city in an open-top bus, from Moncloa to the Plaza de Cibeles, passing through Calle Princesa and Calle Alberto Aguilera, where thousands of people wait to celebrate with them. Rodri, holding the cup high from the roof of the bus, leads a scene that is already a custom in Spanish football. Not a single hero waving to the crowd, but 23 people sharing the exact same moment, each in their own way, none above the rest. The Prime Minister sums it up in a few words on his social media. The entire country feels like world champions alongside their national team. If you put together the three stories this channel has told this year, Messi protecting, for 20 years, a boy's love for the ball, Yamal playing without fear because he never lost sight of who he was, and now Spain winning an entire World Cup without needing any individual to carry the weight alone. A pattern emerges that goes far beyond football. Individual genius can take you very far. It can win matches, break records, change the history of a club or a national team, but the trust built within a group, sustained for years, trained until it becomes invisible, is capable of something that not even the greatest talent achieves alone, sustaining itself without breaking through 90 minutes of nothingness until patience finally bears fruit in the 106th minute. Neither path is universally the correct one. Football, like life, has room both for the genius who carries an entire team on his shoulders, and for the system where no one needs to carry anything alone. But it is worth noting that, when both paths faced each other head-to-head, on the biggest pitch in the world, with everything at stake, the one that won was the one that had invested whole years into building shared trust before needing it. The question I leave you with this time is not about a player. It is about you and your own team, whatever it may be. Your work, your family, your project. Are you building a space where others dare to take risks without fear of being singled out if they fail? Or does all the weight still fall, deep down, on a single person? That, more than any tactic, is the psychology that won this World Cup. If you are interested in this way of looking at sports and the mind, subscribe to the channel. Every week, we break down a real story to find the psychology behind it. See you in the next video.